Welcome, thank you. Welcome to the City of Mesa's Planning and Zoning Board for March 25th. I am Vince DiBella. To my left, I have Board Member Balke. To my right, Board Member Johnson, Board Member Allen, Board Member Ikeda, and Board Members Hudson and Clement are absent today. So we have a couple changes to the agenda. Items 4A, 5A, and 6A have been removed from the consent agenda. Please make a note of it. Staff, are there any more blue speaker cards for consideration? All right, thank you. Next on the agenda would be reading of the consent agenda items. Ms. Dalkey will read for the record. Thank you.
Item 2A is approval of the minutes from the regular hearing and minutes from the February 17th and 18th, 2015 study sessions and hearing. Item 3A, KZ 15006, District 6. This is the 1800 block of South Crismon Road. It's located north of Baseline Road on the east side of Crismon, approximately 3.84 acres. This is a site plan review to allow for the development of a retail center. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions. And item 5B, Gateway Plaza, District 6, the 5300 block of South Power Road, east side, located south of Ray Road on the east side of Power, approximately 5.54 acres. This request will allow the subdivision of a property approved for retail and office uses. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions.
Great, thank you. Is there a motion?
I would like to make a motion that we approve the consent agenda as it was read.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Please vote. Motion carries. Thank you. Item 4A, Z15-010, 7135, 7156, and 7159 East Hannibal Circle is the case that we'd like to discuss at this point in time. Brown Road, east of Power Road, 3.3 acres, rezoned from RS35 to RS15 and site plan review. Request will allow development of single residence subdivision. Staff, would you like to provide an overview?
Of the board. KC 1510 is located on Hannibal Circle. It's just north of Brown Road and east of Power. The site is approximately 3.34 acres. The request is to rezone from RS35 to RS15 to accommodate a 4-lot subdivision. So the request is to go from a 3-lot subdivision to a 4-lot. Staff is recommending approval with conditions. The minimum lot size of the subdivision will be 30,182 square feet. So that will be the smallest lot and go up from there. The applicant, there was a glitch in the citizen participation plan prior to the applicant being on the case. The owner of the property had hired a title company to pull the addresses, and the wrong Hannibal Circle was used. So not all of the neighbors were notified about the neighborhood meeting. The appropriate neighbors were notified for the formal notification process. So I have explained that to the neighbors that I have been in contact with, that it was an error. It was not intentional. It was recognized after the staff report being written. We were unaware of it at the time of writing the staff report. Basically, there were two ways to get to the 4 lots, either rezoning to RS15 with the heavy conditions of approval that really do limit any further subdivision, or an RS35 with a BIZ overlay. Staff did not feel that there was justification for the BIZ overlay with the limited amenities provided in the subdivision, so that we did recommend that they rezone to RS15 with heavy conditions of approval that really do limit any further subdivision. So it truly would say if someone wanted to further subdivide it, they would have to rezone the property again.
Thank you. Is the applicant present? Would they like to make a brief presentation?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, for your record, my name is Reese Anderson. My address is 1744 South Vista, number 217 here in Mesa. Mr. Chairman, I'll defer to your direction, if I may. In the interest of time and addressing just the issues raised by the neighbors, I can make a presentation to you now, or I can wait till afterwards. Do you have a preference, you and other members of the board?
It's your choice.
Okay. Why don't I just give you a quick overview of what I anticipate to hear, just to kind of set the stage. Would that be all right? Okay. So I'm going to switch to this PowerPoint presentation, and if I can work it properly. As you can see here, this outlined in red here is our site, and let me see if I can get it to go correctly on the... I think that's the right way to do it. I can't get the mouse to work, but I know what the shortcut key is. This is the site here. As you can see, the density is 1.12, very much in keeping with the general plan for the area. To our east is RS 15 lots. To the north, there are some acre lots. And everything around us is zoned RS 55. You've heard the staff talk a little bit about kind of two paths to get here. We originally filed the case with RS 35 BIZ. But staff preferred RS 15. Therefore, you see some of those heavy stipulations as far as limiting to 4 lots, minimum lot size, compliance with the site plan, all those things, which we offered up as assurances to the residents that this subdivision would not go smaller than 4 lots. The other interesting thing to know about this site, and just to explain, we're here just for a site plan approval, a rezone, and of course a preliminary plat, is just the history on it. So, you know, as laid out in the staff report in 2006, there was a plan for 6 lots here. That was not received well by the residents around it. It was withdrawn by the owner at the time. They built this subdivision, and in it today, if you go out there and drive it, you can see that the infrastructure is in, and it's got ribbon curb. You and I know ribbon curb is associated generally with on-lot retention. And so this is what's out there today. This is looking now east, and you can see here, you know, it's a very nice neighborhood that it's located in. When this developer came forward, they were looking at how can we improve the situation, how can we make things better. They started to dwell around with a 5-lot subdivision, determined that wasn't best, let's go to 4. Working carefully with the engineering staff, the streets department here, we were able to keep this existing infrastructure in place with 4 lots, keep the on-lot retention, which is why you see one of the conditions of approval in the staff report as a development agreement, so that there's clear notice to everybody that these lots, when they come in for building permit, have to provide a grading and drainage plan, and that's how we maintain that. I know this drawing's a little bit busy, so let me just go to this landscape plan. It's much easier to see the lot lines here, and in the lower right-hand corner, you'll see where the retention basin is for the half-street runoff here on 72nd Street. And so the way the drainage engineers have approached this project, together with Mesa City engineers, is that they've looked at it and said, we're going to take the half-street runoff from 72nd Street, collect it in the existing scupper, and keep it in that basin there in the southeast corner or in the lower right of your picture. The on-lot retention, or everything, that all the rainfall that falls on the lots and on the cul-de-sac street itself, will be retained on site. Now, with this development will become a perimeter block wall all the way around. So this will improve the drainage situation. Now, what happens now is rain falls on the site, it just sheet flows through. And so that's right now falling onto some of our neighbors' property to the south, and it's causing them some problems. So with these improvements, we're actually going to improve the drainage situation there in the area. Now, this is, as you heard from staff, there was a little snafu in the neighborhood notice meeting. Now, the good news here is that the concerned neighbors around the site have reached out to staff, and a handful have been willing to talk with me, and I've called them on the phone, and we've talked. And here's what I've gathered from looking at the comments given to staff, as well as talking to a few of the folks. And let me tell you what we've done to address concerns. The biggest one that I've heard come from the neighbors is just the number of stories. How high are you going to build? Well, right now, if you leave things as they are, it's 3 lots, and we're allowed to go 2 stories or the maximum building height. What we've done to address that is limited all these buildings to a single story, and you see that in the conditions of approval. There's an interesting question about fill dirt, whether or not you're going to bring in fill dirt. As I got to the bottom of that question, it was really about, are you going to raise the level of the lots to make the buildings higher? The answer to that, of course, is yes, we have to, because building code, as you know, requires the finished floor of your first floor elevation to be about 14 inches above the low point of the curb. The policy, of course, behind that rule is obvious. They don't want your house to flood when there's significant rainwater. Stormwater drainage. We talked a little bit about that already. This subdivision, with the improvements that we're going to make here and the way we're treating the stormwater, will improve things significantly. Again, any water coming onto the site is going to be completely retained, and water coming down 72nd Street, we're collecting the volume that we're required to for our frontage. Streetlights. I think the concern there was how many are you going to have, and are you going to make things too bright in the area? Even though this isn't technically in the desert uplands, there's still a desert uplands feel. The answer is yes, we have to by code, but it's just one, and it's in the cul-de-sac itself. So it'll be shielded by the homes that are there. Square footage of the homes. I think the question, or the impetus behind this question posed to us, was what's the quality of these homes going to be like? And we've agreed that these will be at least 3,000 square feet. That's a nice size home. It's a high quality home. RV garages. Will you build them? How tall will they be? Answer is yes, we want to reserve the right to have RV garages. Our neighbors around us have RV garages, but like the restriction I talked about earlier, they'll be limited to single story in height. Who's the builder? And I think that question again came, are you going to flip it? Are you going to try and just parcel this out and we have cheap homes there? Answer, of course, is this developer, Long-Term Development, and the gentleman from Long-Term are here with me this evening. They're going to keep this and build these homes themselves. Now let me show you a little bit more of concerns just that I've heard from residents is, hey, we're going to have homes closer to us. You're going to bring some tiny homes and they're going to be there. And that really goes to a property values question. You know, you're going to hurt my property values. Well, look at here. An RS35, minimum square foot is 35,000. RS15 is 15,000. But look what the condition of approval is a minimum of 30,000 square feet. Building height, and both of those categories is 2 stories, 30 feet. Again, here we're restricting this to single story. Front yard setbacks remain the same. We haven't asked for any deviations. The rear yard setbacks are the same. So we're just not bringing homes any closer than they could be with the changes in this subdivision. Now, this is an interesting analysis that I did here because it goes to property values. As you can see, this is 72nd Street. Outlined in red is what's called the El Tesoro project. It's south of us, and if you look closely just up the street, you'll see the existing Sunset Cove. So I went to the county assessor site. I did a quick average of their square footage of the lots there, 26,684 square feet. And look at the 2016 full cash value according to the county assessor, $459,000. That's nice. It was great. I wish my house was worth that much. Then these are the 3 homes of our neighbors to the north of us. Very nice homes, all on about 44,000 square feet. But look at that 2016 full cash value, $355,000. The argument that these lots at this size, 30 and 31, 33,000 square feet with 3,000 square foot homes, that argument just doesn't ring true. These will be nice homes, well designed, well constructed. There's an old cliche that I think is applicable here, which is a rising tide floats all boats. I had a question from one of the neighbors. What will your designs look like? So I asked the developer. They sent me these photos. Now, what's important to note here is that the landscaping of this is not desert upland style like we're talking about. So if you can look past that, if you would, please. But look at the design and architecture of what we're thinking about here on these homes. Again, very nicely done. Different colors, different materials. This is the type of architecture. Did I go too fast for anyone? Thank you. At the end of the day, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, I looked at this just to say, as you kind of weigh everything out and you look at the concerns raised from our residents, I think we've addressed them adequately. And in fact, I think we've improved the situation, with one of the largest concerns being building height. And we're limiting to single story. Absolutely, I think that's an improvement. Drainage issues, the steps we're taking improve the situation. When you weigh all those things together, I think you're actually making the area better. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Board members, any questions of the applicant at this point?
Mr. Reese, I understand your position, and I read the case very carefully, I think. It looks like you're going to build a very nice product, whether it's 3 lots or 4 lots. My concern, and as I addressed it to you before, is that I don't mind making a zoning change if there's a real physical need to do so. What I mean, if there's a physical barrier something impeding the construction, the development of the project, where you have to go to 4 rather than 3, I can see it. But I really don't see the need here. All those things that you addressed, improving the property, can be done on 3 lots just as well as on 4. But if you do it on 3, we don't have to have the zoning change, and that's my concern here. We have other people who have expressed concerns, and that would be my concern here, that it seems like we're just, and I'd like to accommodate the builder or the owner on it, but there has to be a real need to do that rather than just for the desire of the developer or the owner to do so. So that's my concern about this project.
Mr. Chairman, Member Ikeda, 2 thoughts for you, if I could, kindly and respectfully. One, the issue of whether or not there's a need here is not really part of the zoning analysis overall. I mean, as a property owner, you have the right to make that request. I don't mean to say that in any disrespectful tone. With that request, you have to look at to say, okay, is this consistent with the general plan? Is it consistent with the area around it? I think we satisfy all of those tests. In fact, I think we clearly do. With the issue of could we build single story on there today, the answer is sure, absolutely. But I don't think that goes a step far enough to say, if I'm an adjacent resident and I'm concerned about height, then let's work together to get in place the right restrictions so that height isn't an issue. And that's where I think the scales tip at the end of the day, because here I've got unknown, I've got uncertainty, and what we're bringing is certainty. And that's just my thought for you to consider, if you would, please, sir.
And Ms. Reese, I have considered that. Again, I have to go back to, if it's a vacant piece of property where it's not really adjacent to anything that would obstruct you building the 3 lots instead of the 4. And you're asking us to make a zoning change, which I know in the previous, reading the history of it, it seems like, well, we'd like to get 6 lots on there before. We couldn't do it. Well, let's try for 5 lots. Couldn't do it. Well, okay, let's try for 4. And that's what we're discussing now. And the zoning calls for, I think, R35, if I'm not mistaken. And we're trying to make the changing just to accommodate what you want to do. And I think what you're going to do, whether it passes or not, will be a good job. But I have to look at it. I'd like to try to preserve as much of the zoning as we can. And if there was a need to do the change of zoning, I'd be for it. In fact, we had a case last month where the development didn't quite go the way we thought, and there was a need to do it. That's fine, we'll do that. But in this case, I don't see that need.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, Member Ikeda, would it make a difference in your mind, just hypothetically, if this was a RS35BIZ versus an RS15? Or is it the lot count that's giving you trouble here?
Well, I think I'm trying to preserve it. I'd like to keep it pretty much the way it is with the 3 lots rather than the 4.
I understand. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, sir. With that, I would, again, just respectfully ask you to just consider, I mean, if in each of our cases where we may even have a 10-acre lot and I'm only allowed to build 1 home on it, and that zoning is there, as long as I'm consistent and complementary to the uses around me, change by itself is not necessarily bad.
Okay.
Just a thought for you, sir. Thank you for your comments.
All right. Anybody else? Any other questions? I'd like to hear from some of the residents. We do have several speaker cards. I apologize in advance if I slaughter your names. I don't mean to. But we do have some residents that would like to speak. We'd like to hear them as well. So, Mr. Anderson, stay tuned. We'll probably call you back up here in a little bit. All right, as you approach the podium, just for the record, your name and address for the record, and we'll get that started. What's that?
3 minutes.
Yeah, there's a 3-minute rule, but we'll just work with that as you come forward. Donald and Nancy Bailing, if you'd like to come forward.
Hello, I'm Donald Bowling at 7119 East Indigo Street. This is the property that is just adjacent on the north side of the subject property. We had this meeting in 2006, and the board members at that time, in their wisdom, chose not to change the 1 acre minimum building code at that time, and I will not waste your time repeating their reasons why they didn't change, but I will give you my personal reasons why I believe it should not be, we should leave the zoning as it is at this time. When my wife Nancy and I bought this property 20 years ago, we wanted to live in a community with 1 acre lots to reap the benefits of the quiet privacy they have to offer. Coming from the typical city lots, I was getting complaints from my neighbor on one side when I ran my saw, and we had to listen to an obnoxious dog barking from our neighbor 30 feet from our patio on the other side. We paid dearly for the quiet privacy and giving up the size and quality of the home we live in. If we wanted to live close to our neighbors, we could have built a much bigger home with much better features, but we placed considerable value in our space. The proposal before the board is to increase the existing 3 lots to 4. This would mean by the plan we see before us, the 1 lot south of us would change to 2 lots. That means the center of the lot adjacent to our property would be approximately 85 feet closer to our home. This proposal is totally unacceptable to us. We hope you consider our position in this matter. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay. Tim Ortner.
I did not choose.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yep, you did not. You just you stated you oppose. Okay. Jay Boren.
Hello, my name is Jay Bourne. I own a property directly north of this, and my address is 7125 East Indigo. The last time that this came toward the board voted 6-0 not to change it. And, you know, if you guys have read the past report, you'll notice that there are several things in there, but it kind of is summed up by board member Fintner when he commented that he opposed the rezoning because of all the adjacent properties were at least an acre. And although these are 30 or 31, thousand square feet, the smallest surrounding one is over an acre. And so they're 50% larger. And if you take the adjacent properties and divide them into 5, which are the adjacent properties, you get almost 59,000 square feet. The owner and developer have changed this time. They're asking for 1 lot less, they've got a law firm this time representing them, but everything's still the same. Nothing. The 4 reasons why that Michael Bell, the staff planner 2, said no, and they recommended no, nothing's changed. And even as part of it, one of the things that he commented on is once the zoning category has changed, the parcel may be processed as a pre-plat only and need not be scrutinized to any other standards other than the platting of appropriate lots within the zoning category. Appropriate lots within the R115 zoning category may yield up to 10 lots for the subject site. One of the other things that he talked about was one of the 4 reasons was the spot zoning. 72nd Street's the natural boundary on that. It divides the R115, the half-acre lots, from the acre-plus lots. And when you carve a little section out, that's what he says. He says prevention of spot zoning which is when a property is rezoned and is not adjacent to any other of the same zoning category. And that's what would happen here. I guess my time's about up, but, I hope that you guys will consider this. And it is different than Tesoro. Tesoro has huge retention basin in the end. It's private property. The road's private property. And it's not 3.34 acres, it's less than 3. The road is public property, it's a City of Mesa property. 2 of the lots are slightly under an acre, one's slightly over an acre. So I hope that the board will, respect the previous board's ruling, and I thank you for your time.
Okay. Thank you. I do have a question for you, if you don't mind. Are you okay with the 3 lots and the potential two-story residence that could be built there?
Yeah, I believe that if it's your property and it's zoned that way, that you ought to be able to do what you want on your property.
Okay, so you don't have any issues with 2 stories. It's the number of lots and the size of the lot.
It's the number of lots. The one that gets hurt the worst is Mr. and Mrs. Balling, because it'll move the house, 90 or 100 feet closer to them if we go with the 4 lots.
Thank you. Mr. Craig Vossler?
Ladies and gentlemen, Craig Vossler. I live at 1451 North 71st Street, so my property is roughly 200 feet southwest. I have a 3-acre parcel, and we were here 9 years ago, same piece of property, different owners. We're looking for the same result as we got 9 years ago. We'd rather see just 3 homes on the property. There's really no reason. I agree with Mr. Ikeda. And I do want to touch on the public neighborhood meeting that was proposed back in October. I know it was possibly a mistake. It may have been intentional, unintentional. I don't care. It makes the owners look good. It makes the neighborhood look bad. We didn't have any idea of that meeting. We weren't informed of it, whether it was intentional or not. It makes them look good. We would have been working on this a lot sooner, probably. A lot of us, have only had a couple weeks to prepare for this. My main concern is with the drainage of stormwater that comes down 72nd Street. This is not a typical neighborhood street. It's undeveloped in portions. It's developed at the very northern part of it, and I have some pictures, and I'll see if I can operate the laptop here. There's a very large development at the very north end of 72nd Street, which is a dead-end cul-de-sac. That is Annecy. It was supposed to be an exit-only exit. It's my understanding that there are people coming and going. But as you can see, it is developed to the very southernmost corner of their property. Right about there. There are a couple of storm basins that supposedly bring water over to this corner and then down a storm drain to a retention basin that's at Brown Road and 72nd Street, which is probably a good half mile. Okay? So as the street progresses, there's those storm drains. And you can see that the corners of 72nd Street, this is approaching Indigo, where most of these folks live. It's undeveloped, so there's no curb or anything there. Crossing 72nd, or crossing Indigo, the road is a rough shoulder, and as you can see, it drops off, and that water funnels, stormwater funnels to this area right here, which is a natural flow into that property. And back in 07, 08, when they developed the half street and the cul-de-sac, it changed the flow of water further down 72nd Street. It used to just run right off 72nd into the natural desert. So consequently, for about the last 8 years, and there's that low spot there, the last 8 years, we've had some excess water running through my neighbor's property, John Alexander. He's at 1535 North 71st, and then it comes through my property, and then runs out to 71st Street, crosses 71st Street, runs down 71st to Halifax Drive, and eventually goes all the way out to Power Road to some storm drains out there. So backing up to this proposal where the development starts on the north side, they want to put up a short wall where that natural recession is. So that water is going to divert even more onto 72nd Street and come down the half street. Now we have one storm basin, catch basin, and that leads to what would be the retention basin of Lot 4. So right now the proposal is to put in a basin along 72nd Street, and I'm not convinced that doing that is going to control the water any better. It might help, it might not, it might make it worse. So that's my concern. Now, they were just out there recently and fixed this culvert like 2 weeks ago. It's an 18-inch tile, and evidently the previous tile was clogged. So maybe that was causing more of my problems. I don't know. I don't expect to know until we get some heavy rains, which, a half inch, 3/4 to an inch rain, we get some serious water through our properties. That's the view of what would be retention basin Lot 4. Their property ends right there, and that's looking back north then. So my concern is about the drainage, one way or another, whether they put 3 or 4 houses in there. But at this point, I think we need to leave the property the way it is.
Okay, thank you. Any questions?
Yeah, I did have a question. Out of these houses, I'm looking at the improvements, the street improvements, and they don't appear to be city improvements. Are some of these properties in the county?
No, we're all City of Mesa now. It was annexed, I believe, in 1988.
Correct. They were actually developed in Maricopa County, though.
Okay,
but
that's why they have
annexed
those
into the
standards.
city.
That's why there's probably some drainage problems?
Correct, possibly.
Well, and I don't expect the drainage problem to totally go away. And after speaking with the civil engineer with the city, he said until my neighbor and myself and the one to the south of me improve our properties, we're probably still going to experience some drainage problem. But I am not convinced that the drainage problem is going to be solved or improved.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Mr. David Levitt.
Dave Levitt, I own the property immediately to the north of the lots in question, 7131 East Indigo Street. The whole proposed development is directly behind the south wall of my home. What I'm concerned, I would like it the way it is. I mean, we have some open space there. It's a horse property. It's nice. I understand things cannot always stay the same. For me, if this were to be developed, I would prefer to keep it with 3 lots. 3 large, nice homes on 3 lots would actually, I think, benefit the area, benefit the neighborhood, rather than running the risk of changing it to R15 and possibly having it go through ownership change and refiling for rezoning and ending up, with smaller divisions. I would prefer to keep it 3 rather than 4, rather than take a chance on changing the zone and going with 4. And it's also, as someone pointed out on the overlay, the map, this little development is an intrusion into the larger enclave of 1 acre and upward size lots. It's inconsistent with this little area of the R35. Those are my concerns, and I think if it were to go through, I would much prefer keeping it as is with 3 lots, 3 homes.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Any questions from Mr. Levitt? Okay. We have one more. Ms. Donna Edwards.
Hello, my name is Donna Edwards. I live at 1543 North 72nd Street. That is directly across the street from the proposed development. And I apologize, I didn't know there was a neighborhood meeting, or I would have expressed my concerns there. We are right across the street from it, from the proposed development, and we have all the same concerns that I've heard voiced just now, the concerns about the water storm drainage system. 72nd Street does have a problem there, and the way that that property is sloped, it could cause a worse problem. The second thing that I'm also like to see the acreage property continued. We do not live on an acre. We're on the other side of the street. We have a half an acre, but one of the big draws is, hey, there's horse property over there. We go feed the Andersons' horse all the time. We'd like to preserve that. And then the third thing that bothers me is that the perimeter wall they're talking about is a 6-foot wall. I would not want to face that every day because my house fronts it. And so I would like to see that is reduced in size. It should not be a 6-foot wall that's facing the street. So again, I'd like to see the three house limit. I'd like to see 1 stories because there's a beautiful view that I won't have any longer if they build a 2nd-story house there. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions, sir? All right. Mr. Anderson, would you like to give you a few more minutes to address anything you've heard here tonight?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One day I'm going to learn how to figure out this screen.
A few minutes now.
No kidding. Can anyone see the mouse, or I'm going to have to ask for help? Here he comes. Would you?
This mouse.
No, that mouse, not that itself. There we go. 5, thank you. I learned a new trick to actually use the mouse rather than the mouse pad on the computer. Let me just scroll down real quick and address a few of the issues. I'm sorry, if we could, let me just talk a little bit about what's around us, to give you a little bit more insight as to what's there and why. And I just think if I were to sum up all of my comments now, it is that we just respectfully and kindly disagree that we are bringing something worse to this neighborhood. I actually think this is a positive thing. And let me show you what's around us. And Miss Edwards, who lives right across 72nd Street, again, very nice homes. I spoke to one of her neighbors, Mr. Glenn Branning, whose home is right there. You can see it there slightly on the left side of your screen. After talking with him, resolved all concerns. He didn't have any issues with what we were working on. Again, this is a view just to the northeast, and you can just see some of the area around it. This is our view to the north. Let me go to the next slide. This is Mr. Levitt's property here, and again, while they're a little bit coy this evening, if you look at their written communications to the staff, all of them have talked about how they don't want any 2-story homes. This is Mr. Levitt's backyard. Again, restricting these homes to single-story keeps that status quo, even though he has the right to do it. This is Mr. Bourne's property, a large 2-story RV garage workshop with an accessory living structure above it. And you can see that it's right there off of the back wall of his property. This is to the northwest, over here towards what we would call, this is Mr. Balling's property here. And you can see where he's got his RVs stored right there, just feet off of the property line. This is to the west. Here you can see the existing large 2-story home. Pretty typical, as you would say. Not of the same quality that we're proposing. This is a view to the southwest. And let me zoom in a little bit here. And you can see where they've stored a lot of their extra vehicles, rundown boats, etc. This is, again, back to the southeast. Let me talk a little bit about drainage, again, just to reiterate. Overall, when you look at the improvements being done here and the way we're treating that runoff from 72nd Street, again, the 2-prong approach, we're improving things dramatically. To the north of us, we can't do anything about it. That's owned by Mr. Levitt, others to the north. To the south of us, where we've got Mr. Alexander, Mr. Vossler, I think the real solution there is for these folks to get together with City of Phoenix Streets Department and work on dedicating that right-of-way, getting a curb and gutter in to direct that flow and keep it in 72nd Street so it doesn't continue to flow in. And so, I mean, we would kindly ask that these folks be part of the solution to this issue that they're working on. Again, this just gives you an idea here of some of the residents here this evening. We respect their concerns and their valid concerns. I do think, though, and I feel strongly that we've adequately and sufficiently and successfully addressed all those concerns and improved the situation overall. It's just ironic that we're talking about or making the accusation that a 3,000 to 3,500 square foot home on a 30,000 square foot lot is somehow in less quality, it's inferior. These will be very nice. And again, the rising tide floats all boats. This will be an absolute benefit to this neighborhood and will not detrimentally cause anyone any problems. Lastly, let me just address the issue which goes back to kind of this comparison in history from 2006 till today. I see these things as just dramatically different. In 2006, again, you had smaller lots in the 20,000, 22,000 square foot range. There was a common retention basin. That's similar to what you're looking at down the street at Tesoro in that slide I showed you earlier. Here, there's the only common retention area basin is that one off of 72nd Street. It's small in nature. Yes, there's a perimeter wall. In fact, it's a decorative wall. I mean, if you remember staff talking about the integrated color in the block, and there'll be landscaping there, so it just won't be a stark wall. But today what we're talking about are lots that are in 30 to 33,000 square feet, limiting it to single story. This is significantly different, and it's certainly not spot zoning. Spot zoning is where you take something, put it there, and it's wholly inconsistent with what's there. This is not spot zoning in the least. Mr. Chairman, let me answer any questions that you or the board may have. I've probably talked too much. Thank you for your time.
All right, we can reserve questions if you want to hear from staff one last time, or you can have any questions of the applicant. Okay. Stay tuned, and staff, you'd like to give any closing remarks there?
Thank you, Chair, members of the board. And I do appreciate all the residents coming here today. I did have the pleasure of speaking to most of them on the phone and discussing some of the concerns. As stated previously, we are recommending approval with conditions. We do feel that it's a good transitional use between the large rural lots. Even though they are over an acre, the majority of them, they are zoned RS35. As noticed on some of the properties to the south of Hannibal Circle, for one of the properties, they did split it off for two lots, one facing onto 72nd, one facing onto 71st, and they are able to do that based on their lot size. So they are zoned RS35, which is larger lots. And then we believe it does provide a nice transition to the RS15, the smaller lots on the eastern side of 72nd Street. It does play a nice buffer between the suburban developments and the rural, based on the ribbon curb and all of the on-lot retention. So staff is recommending approval with conditions, and the conditions of approval will limit any further subdivision. They do need to comply with a development agreement that would be approved by City Council that would SIP them to the site plan submitted and the on-lot retention that has been worked on with the engineering division. They have to abide by the site plan. That does show 4 lots and the minimum lot size of 30,182 square feet. The homes would be limited to 1 story in height. The wall would be decorative. It would have the inner block color in the wall and the block. And as of right now, someone could build just a normal block wall, no landscaping, as it sits currently with the 3 lots. And that the applicant shall preserve the saguaros on site. So they do not need to replant them on site. It's encouraged. They're not required to. It's just preserving and trying to replace them elsewhere. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Any questions, staff? Okay. Anybody else have any questions on anything else? So this kind of happens. This happens before in terms of being at the higher end of one zoning classification and lower end of another, and you have to kind of find the dividing mark between zoning classifications. I'm not hung up on the size of the lot and the benefits that Mr. Anderson, you pointed out for your client in terms of restricting the height and potential drainage. seem to be beneficial, but the residents that spoke here tonight don't seem to concur with that. So it is a little bit of a dilemma related to that. Do you have any last comments regarding that, or that perception that the benefits of what you stated don't really seem to carry any weight with the surrounding residents in the area?
Mr. Chairman, perhaps you could just restate the question again so I fully understand what you're driving at.
It's not really a question, I guess. It's more of a statement. I understand, from my perspective, I understand what you're saying in terms of restricting the height. It would seem to be beneficial to the surrounding property owners. I guess if I were living there, it would seem like that would be a benefit to, allowing one additional lot versus the 3 that are currently zoned. But that doesn't seem to be important to the surrounding property owners. You kind of alluded that it was, but what they've stated here tonight didn't seem to suggest that.
Mr. Chairman, that's true, and that's why I, with all due respect to them, I think they've played a bit coy tonight in the written communications and in their verbal communications with staff. They've communicated significant concerns about building height. So to me, if you were to strip that issue out, is that kind of maybe what you're looking at here, to say, hey, if this isn't, even if that was not an issue here, I still think at the end of the day, when you weigh things out, the scales tip squarely in favor of this proposal. I think it makes overall sense. I think sometimes we as human beings are worried about the unknown here, and as much as I'd like to be able to sit and talk with these folks, and that offer remains open, I'm on the record as willing to talk with them at any time, I don't think here that this project is detrimental to them in any way. The quality of the home, the size of the lots, the type of architecture going in will be fit right in, and as soon as it's built, they'll be proud to call these folks their neighbors.
So what's the tipping point then, going through all this process and going through the rezoning process to add the additional lot? What's the motivation there? What's making it beneficial for your client?
Sure. The benefit for my client, of course, is that they've picked up a lemon and they're making lemonade. So right now this property sits empty, it's vacant, not doing anyone any good, causing drainage problems for our folks downstream. And here, as we pick it up and we try to improve upon what's there, that in turn benefits the folks around us.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Sure.
Mr. Anderson, could you just give us a little bit more history on why the property wasn't able to be developed as is today? Just a little background. Some of the challenges.
Board Member Dahl, yes. So your question is, why cannot it be developed as it is today? Is that right? So the answer to that question is, you probably could develop it today, right? Let's not kid around. You could go out there and just build it like it is. But as you look at it and try to say, okay, I've got a lemon, let's try and improve it overall. How do we do that? And how do we do it without detrimentally affecting folks? And that's where I think we just have a respectful disagreement on whether or not we're going to detrimentally affect folks. And so we look at those things. We try to balance them out. And we do that from the very beginning. And so when our firm came on here, our developers, they were looking at around 5 lots. I don't mean that to disparage them. Developers do those kind of analysis. But as we looked at it, we considered all of the issues around. 4 made the most sense, especially given that the existing street is in with that ribbon curb. Okay? And so as you try to keep that in, as you go to make more changes, you have to start ripping up that entire street. And that causes significant challenges and costs. So as we're able to leave that street alone, not upset the apple cart, if you will, we're still able to work 4 lots, make these overall improvements. We think it's a win-win for everybody here.
Just a quick follow-up. But was the property marketed with 3 lots, and was there issues getting interest in people purchasing those lots?
I think, Board Member Dalkey, your question might be, how long does the property sit, et cetera? Let me turn around and ask Mr. Chris Long and Aaron Dutcher about how long it was that case. I know they bought it last year. I know that the property was platted in 2007 and built, I think, in roughly the same year. And I think it sat empty for the prior 8 years. But I would defer to some of our good neighbors that are here that have lived in the area. They might be able to answer even more. But let me ask Mr. Long real quick, if I could, Mr. Chairman, just on if they know any of the marketing issues. Hold on a second. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Long just tells me they don't have a lot of history on it. I mean, they really were shown the property and learned about it last year, picked it up from the market then. I think it sat vacant. I think it's fair to say that it sat that way. I think the other interesting thing, and if I could just add some, let's just call it anecdotal evidence from my point of view working in this area every day. The size of lot we're talking about here versus a larger one is much more attractive to a lot of the executive housing types these days. They're looking for a nice size lot, but not too big, so they don't have too much maintenance, where they can build a nice home. In fact, single-story homes seem to be quite popular these days with some of the housing executives. And so from that perspective here, to me, the market is really asking for some of these type of lots and not keeping with these acre plus. With all due respect to our folks around us, they're wonderful homes, wonderful sites, but here I don't think we're doing anything to rock the boat so dramatically that it would cause them any consternation at all. And it's just a respectful disagreement that we have with them.
Now, I did have one question, and I'm sure it's been talked about, but I just can't get it clear in my mind. The existing 3-lot subdivision, what would it take to pull a permit and build a house there right now? And what kind of drainage would you have to provide?
Okay, Mr. Chairman, Board Member Johnson, to build a home on it today, I'm of the impression, it's my understanding, that you would file that with building safety. After your review, you get a permit and go.
So they would address each person's drainage individually as they came on?
I believe that's the case.
And so there would not be one comprehensive drainage solution for this property?
Correct. Right. And that's the other benefit here, is that you're able to give a comprehensive solution. And to me, that was one of the key things when we met with engineering, and we actually proposed that idea to them, when we met with Gordon Haas and Stefan Ganstrom, was let's take a two-prong approach here. And they really liked it, and you can see what's on the drawings before you.
Okay. Any other discussion? I think we're ready for a motion. If someone would like to, Ms. Allen?
I'd like to.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. One more thing. Do we consider 4A and 5A together, or do we have to have separate action?
As long as you read them both in, you
Okay.
can do action on both.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve number PZ, let's see, wait a minute, Z15010, as well as, which I guess I don't see a zoning case on that one. Just the Sunset Cove Estates District 5 preliminary plat.
Okay. There's a motion.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Please vote. We have 4 in the affirmative and 1 in the negative. So the motion carries. Thank you for the case. Residents, thank you for attending. Okay, next. Item 6A.
Shelly took them.
I did.
Regulations for parking spaces. Angelica, if you'd like to give a very brief overview.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the board. We're here today with seeking a recommendation for approval for a modification to the parking regulations. Specifically, we're looking to modify Section 11-32-3C, which would allow an increase in the maximum parking spaces that are allowed for some types of office developments. Specifically, we're looking to increase parking regulations to office developments that do exceed 60,000 square feet in area, and that would also have higher employee densities, which would exceed 1 employee per each 200 square feet of area of that building. The reason for that change in the code is to help accommodate office developments that would be occupied by high-tech type of developments. And based on some research that we've done, we've also seen that employee densities are increasing, and we're trying to be a little proactive and trying to accommodate some of those users that are looking to occupy some office space with Mesa. But because we have limitations on the number of parking spaces that can be provided at a site, because of some modifications that we made to the zoning ordinance in 2011, we do now limit parking areas to be no more than 125% of the minimum required number of parking spaces. So we're looking to modify that subsection of the code that would allow another exception for office developments that meet the true criteria of being 60,000 square feet and also having that employee density that is over 1 employee per 200 square feet of area. So I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Ms. Allen.
I know, that's kind of how I am. The only, I guess, added comment that I would like to make, and you clarified a lot of that downstairs, is maybe if we go back to our friends in economic development and talk to them to find out about the size of floor plate of the building, if we could possibly add that as a restriction instead of an aggregate area of buildings that we talk about a floor plate of a building. I'm okay moving forward with it if we'll just maybe see if we can clarify some language before it goes on to City Council.
Thank you. Chair, Board Member Allen, and just to clarify, staff is recommending the 60,000 square feet and is leaving that open to interpretation currently as it is written to apply to one building that is 60,000 square feet or multiple buildings that it could be 6 buildings that are each 10,000 square feet, just to allow a little more flexibility. But yes, we would certainly go back and talk with the Office of Economic Development. We have done so. They did feel comfortable with this recommendation at this time, but we can go back and talk to them as well.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other discussion? Anybody? Would someone like to make a motion?
I guess since I took it off, I can put it back on. I would make a recommendation that we approve the updated proposed amendments to the zoning ordinance.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Please vote. Motion carries.
Thank you.
All right. I think that concludes the meeting. Motion to adjourn. There we go. Thank you.